Welcome to 365 Christian Men, where every day we aim to inspire and encourage with real-life stories about men. September 11th, Todd Beamer. Todd Beamer was an account manager with Oracle Corporation who sold systems applications. He also taught Sunday school, worked in the youth ministry, and played on the church softball team. Todd rooted for the Chicago Cubs, Chicago Bulls, and Chicago Bears. Todd was an ordinary guy who had entrusted his life to Christ. On one of the bleakest days in the history of the United States, Todd demonstrated courage under tremendous pressure. On this date, in 2001, Todd Beamer stormed the cockpit of United Airlines Flight 93 to San Francisco. Act courageously against evil. Leave a lasting legacy. In the wreckage, they found Todd's watch. On September 11th, Todd made a decision, and his decision saved a lot of people's lives. If someone asked, "Do you know where you were on 9/11?" most of us would answer, yes. That day, the tragedy of terrorism shocked America into stillness. Todd, his wife Lisa, and their 2 little boys had returned from a trip to Italy on September 10th. The next morning, Todd went back to the airport to catch United Airlines Flight 93 for a day trip to San Francisco. Todd flew often. This was just one more business trip. But about 45 minutes into the flight, 4 men with red bandanas tied around their heads stormed the cockpit and killed the pilot and co-pilot. They announced they had a bomb on board and made the 5 flight attendants and 33 passengers move to the back of the airplane so they'd be out of the way. In the back, the passengers were able to talk to each other and call their loved ones. Lisa, Todd's wife, was expecting their 3rd child, and so Todd chose not to call her, knowing it might upset her and affect her pregnancy. Instead, he hit 0 on the phone and connected with Lisa Jefferson, a telephone switchboard operator. Quietly, Todd explained to her what was happening. In that 13-minute conversation, he asked Lisa to say the Lord's Prayer with him and recite Psalm 23. Before his life-ending act of courage, Todd found strength in the Word of God. One passage in particular gave Todd courage. Psalm 56, verses 3 and 4. "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God whose word I praise. In God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me?" Based on the calls Todd and the other passengers had made, they knew about the 2 planes hitting the World Trade Center. They knew this was part of a larger plan. So they decided to storm the cockpit. Todd took one final look at his fellow passengers before he uttered his final words on Earth. "You ready? Let's roll." That day, Todd and his fellow passengers fought back against the terrorists of United Airlines Flight 93. The band of brave passengers shoved their way into the cockpit and stopped the terrorist mission to destroy a target in Washington, D.C., presumably the Capitol building or the White House. Instead of hitting the target, the plane crashed in a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing all the passengers. But hundreds, maybe thousands of lives were saved by the courageous acts of a few gritty passengers. On that field, rescue crews found Todd Beamer's watch, which now sits in the National 9/11 Memorial Museum. It's a 2-tone Rolex, broken and charred. The crystal is missing, as well as one of the hands. You can't tell the time by looking at it, but you do know the day. In a corner of the watch's face, you see the number 11. A fitting artifact, since Todd made the most of his time. What would you do in a situation requiring a courageous choice? Act courageously against evil. Leave a lasting legacy. Thank you for listening to today's story. Every day of the year, our hope is to inspire you with real-life stories of faithful men who have gone before us. For today's story, we have a free 1-page group discussion sheet available on our website. Please join us tomorrow for another story at 365christianmen.com.